Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Total Podcast with me, your host, Phil Scott. So, on today's episode of the Total Podcast, my guest is a dog trainer and a quite gifted one at that. Her name is Lauren Lee, and she works for Mango Dogs. So, without further ado, here is Lauren. So, Lauren, it's nice to meet you. Thank you for being on the show today.
My pleasure, Phil. Like Phil said, my name is Lauren Lee. I'm the head trainer down here at Mango Dog San Diego. And I've been doing this for a little bit more than a year now with this company, but our specialty is rehabbing aggressive and dogs with reactivity issues, which, believe it or not, there's a lot of dogs with that right now because of quarantine and everything. A lot of these dogs have been kept inside. Our lives have been shifted quite a bit. So I've been able to help transform lots of dogs as of late.
Wow. And I've noticed too, I mean, like you were saying, with the lockdowns and everything, a lot of people got dogs.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people don't know necessarily how they should raise their dogs the
Hmm.
proper way.
Correct.
Um, and I did some reading up on different things that actually was the top 10 things that issues that dogs have. And I'm going to run down that list in a little
Yeah,
bit.
let's
And
do it.
you can tell me which ones you seem to encounter the most with your training.
Okay.
So that's awesome. So first of all, Lauren, tell me about your background, where you went to high school, where you went to college, and how you got into dog training, because it's quite a fascinating story from my own research, what I've read about you. It's pretty
Hmm.
fascinating.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's
Awesome.
been quite a journey. Initially, when I started going to school and everything, let me just start. I went to school in Singapore for high school. So I've got to
Wow.
meet a lot of different people out there, which is really neat. And then I came back here to the US where I did my college at Loyola University Chicago.
Hmm.
During that time, I was really focused on going into the vet field. So I was very tunnel vision into working in veterinary sciences, which was a good focus for me to have. It encouraged me to do biology school, a lot of animal psychology, and all that stuff. And during that time, simultaneously, I was working at a vet clinic down in Chicago just to give myself more real life experience working with dogs and cats and domestic animals. And I loved it. I've learned so much from the medical field, and I still enjoy picking up shifts now and again down at my clinic that's pretty close to me. But when I was doing that, I realized that I had a lot of interest outside of my job description. And I wanted to be outside. I wanted to challenge myself with different animals if there was even a way to get into that field. And then I decided to actually enroll into a master's program. I wasn't sure that I was going to go back to school, but one of the veterinarians I was working with coincidentally went to this master's program that was heavily focused on biology conservation. And I was
Hmm.
like, wow, that sounds amazing. That sounds like it's right up my alley. It's going to open a realm of opportunities for me to maybe work with some animals and actually be outside of a vet hospital. So I decided to take a sidestep, go towards school a little bit more. And I got my master's through Miami University, Ohio, through the San Diego Zoo.
Oh, wow.
I know it's crazy. So they have Miami University, Ohio has this really cool satellite program where they partner with a couple of zoos around the US to teach people biology conservation. And the nice thing is you get to focus on what you would like to focus on. So my focus happened to be habitat restoration. I had the opportunity of going to Borneo, for example, to plant some native trees to help link some habitats that were fragmented. It opened my eyes up to wildlife. And then during this schooling, I decided to work at the San Diego Zoo. So everything serendipitously just kind of worked out, which was amazing. My medical background helped me understand animals at the San Diego Zoo. I started there as an educator where I was able to teach people about animal psychology and animal behavior and really get a good grasp on that and really start to introduce myself into the training realm as well. Because with a lot of animals that we work with at the zoo, there's a lot of training that gets involved so that we can work with them in a positive way and in a way that helps us better take care of their husbandry. So after working in education, I took another sidestep into mammal care at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park, where I was able to work with a lot of hoof stock. So now I'm going from dogs and cats to large hoof stock like giraffes and rhinos and antelope, and it's a whole different set of behaviors. But now with these animals, I have to work protective contact. So this job taught me a lot of training and communicating to animals. It taught me how to work safely with animals. And for my dog training business now, I work with a lot of aggressive dogs and a lot of reactive dogs, and I'm usually by myself and or just with a client. So I have all these techniques that have helped me stay safe and our clients safe too, and simultaneously have, you know, pulled a lot of different pieces from these jobs and different pieces of my background to help create best training programs for all these dogs with unique issues. And so far, seen at least 100 dogs transform just from my own hand, which has been amazing. There's been no shortage of dogs coming through our door, which is great because a lot of them graduate just fine after 28 days. So there's been quite a cool transformation that I've seen here in San Diego, and that's kind of how I ended up in dog training. After a couple of years at the San Diego Zoo, picking up training techniques and working with a lot of great people, I decided that I wanted some different changes. I want to be able to teach people different skills to help make more transformations, because to me that was fulfilling. And I liked being able to see, like, what are my abilities? What can I provide to other people? I'm going to take it out of the zoo now and actually start to grow in a different way that I've been craving, which has led me to Mango Dogs. Now, so they coincidentally came into my life about a year and a half ago now. One of my good friends was walking on the beach with his 2 Belgian Malinois, who are very well trained. And this colleague of mine, actually, we work there for a nonprofit called Global Conservation Force, where we basically raise funds here to help support anti-poaching units in Africa. I know it's all over the place. So we have a lot of common interests, but he actually referred the Mango Dog trainers that ran into him to me, because he knew that I was looking for something different. I was still in the zoo at this point, and that's how I took another sidestep towards Mango Dogs and made that my primary job. So now I work pretty much every single day as a dog trainer, and 2 days a week I work at a sanctuary called Nurture by Nature just for my animal fix.
Oh, that's awesome. So you're still doing that as well.
Yes, I know. Yes, so 7 days a week, just nonstop animals and then dogs and then animals and dogs. But I finally have found the niche that makes it all intertwined together just right for me.
That's awesome. Well, I wanted to ask you too, when you were growing up, when you were a child, did you see that that was something that you were interested in, working with animals?
Yes, 110%. Yeah. Like on our Christmas stockings from when I was little, I think we made these at like 5 years old. Myself and all my family members stitched little icons on our stocking of things that we really liked. And mine had lions and tigers and zebras and everything on it. It's always been that way. So from as young as I can remember, I've always loved animals. But like a lot of people only think that like veterinary medicine is the only niche or job where you can actually do that. There's so many more opportunities. And after being in this field and kind of meandering around, I've been able to see all the opportunities that are out there, and it gets better fit for me every time I make a move. So yeah, that's kind of how it all started.
Now, also, I wanted to ask you, while you've been training, what have been kind of the most challenging issues that you've noticed? But let me go on my list that I found.
I would love to see what you found.
All right, so
and then I'll tell you what I think.
So I went on this website because I was doing some digging, and I wanted to see what was the most, the 10 most common issues. So I'll read this to you.
Sure.
So it's the 10 common dog behavior problems and solutions.
Okay, let's hear
And
it.
this was on a site called, let me see.
Mango Dog. I'm kidding.
Let's see. I think it's the sprucepets.com. So it said number 1, barking.
Yes, excessive barking.
Number 2 was chewing. Number 3 was digging, where I guess if people are like apartment dwellers, they wouldn't have that issue.
Yes.
But if you live in a home, then with the yard, I think that would be an issue. Number 4, separation anxiety.
Yeah.
Number 5 was inappropriate elimination. So that's when a dog goes in the house when it knows it shouldn't, but it does it anyway. Number 6 was begging. Number 7 was chasing. So I guess chasing other dogs.
Yeah.
Number 8 was Number 8 was jumping up. So like you have a dog that just likes to jump up on other people and stuff when they come up to them. Number 9 was biting. And then number 10 was aggression.
Yeah.
And it also mentioned how some dogs get a bad rap. Certain breeds get a bad rap for being
Absolutely.
aggressive when
Absolutely.
it's just all in training and how the owners allow the dogs to do what they're doing, or they don't know what to do to
Right.
control the dogs or to teach the dogs what they should do.
Right.
So, in your experience, what have been the things that you have seen the most?
So all of those things on that list are all things that I see very commonly in our
Hmm.
dogs, and it's always a different, assortment of those issues. What I want to bring up first is the common denominator for all those issues: impulse control.
Yes.
Impulse, right? So one of the sayings that we have in Mango Dogs is dogs without jobs are entrepreneurs. I'm going to jump at that thing. I'm going to bark at that thing until it goes away. I'm going to chase that thing until it goes away. So we teach them how to better focus on us first, the owner. Two, we teach them how to better focus on themselves and that impulse. And then we start building upon that and open the world to them in a more healthy way. So what I've seen most often for the dogs that we deal with that's seeming that are the big issues: nipping and lunging.
Hmm.
A lot of dogs, especially now, if they weren't properly socialized, which I understand why, we've had a lot of parameters set on us recently.
Right.
These dogs feel like some of the times nipping and lunging causes that thing to back away. They're creating space for themselves, right?
Hmm.
And if we never, as an owner, had a dog that was doing this and we can't read that behavior or read how to curb a behavior like that, it becomes something that can easily get worse. Animals, by default, and people are really good at making patterns, right? That's how we survive. So for dogs, if one bad thing happens and then they bark and that thing goes away, they're creating patterns and they'll just overgeneralize and bark at everything, right? That's
Right.
just something that dogs will do.
Hmm.
And while it might be beneficial for survival out in the wild, we live with these dogs. They're our housemates, so a little bit different how we interact with them. I would say the most common things we see now, nipping and lunging, separation anxiety is huge because our dogs, especially the ones that were COVID puppies, have been with us in the house all day long. And then finally, we're leaving them in the house and we're walking away. So by teaching them impulse control, that also helps that anxiety and those feelings of uncertainty that they might have when you're not there. And that also will help with the excessive barking, the destructive behaviors, and all that stuff.
Hmm.
So, all these things are curbed through our programs within that 28-day span, which is really nice. And each student is a little bit different. So we tailor our courses to best fit the student and what they actually need to overcome. There's been a lot of random patterns that some dogs have picked up that seem wacky, but as long as you teach them what is right and what is wrong, kind of like how we operate with our kids. When we go outside, no running, kicking, screaming. Same with the dog. When we go outside, no nipping, lunging, barking. There are some things that should be naturally implanted in your dog, and it's my job as a trainer to help owners read their dog's tells and read their dog's behaviors so they can better show their dog a different option. And eventually these dogs will make these healthy choices on their own.
Now, I've got a dog that is owned by a close neighbor, and this dog, I'm serious. If anyone comes near the front door, like if I'm going near my front door to walk in, the dog is in its own apartment and it starts barking. Or if there
Wow.
are workers outside of the apartment, the dog starts barking and it's
Right.
very loud.
Yeah.
And it's just like, why?
What is it, right?
Yeah,
So there are some rational and irrational fears that dogs have. This fear or this reaction is irrational, right? He's barking at things that have nothing to do with him. He thinks it's
right,
his job to bark at things to go away. Because what happens when you're at your front door? You go inside the house, right?
right,
You What happens to the workers when he barks at them outside? They're already walking away.
right,
Same with the mailman. The dogs might think, "Oh yeah, I made that car drive away," but no, that car was driving away already. But it's this pattern that these dogs have created in their heads, right? That it's their job and they're the ones that did it. So humility goes a long way. But training your dog into what's appropriate and what's not, it helps them too. It's in their best interest to calm down. They don't have to go through that anxiety, right? And then the owners also simultaneously will gain confidence when they know how to control their dog. That feedback loop of positivity and confidence is how we switch these behaviors over. So let your neighbor know that I will train that dog.
I will. I
Yeah.
definitely will, because I know that dog would learn a lot from you. Oh
Yeah, and
boy.
I'm sure it's not fun for the owners either. So some people just don't know that there is a way out. I used to have a dog that was reactive too, and sometimes if you don't know that there are trainers out there to help you, you kind of just live with it because people just love their dogs and they let their dogs do whatever they want, and that's understandable. But
Now
sometimes
I
it's nice to have a dog behave.
Yeah, and I think one neat thing that I've seen with dogs that have been trained are like therapy dogs.
Yeah,
Um, a few weeks back, I work with students I teach, and
same thing. Yeah.
we went to the library, and at this particular school, this school goes to a public library that is built onto a middle school. It's kind of a weird setup, but the school doesn't have its own library, like it uses the public
I
library.
see.
So anyway, so I took the class over, and there were these therapy dogs, and the librarian came out and she goes, "Oh, I just want to let you guys know the therapy dogs are back this week." The kids were just, oh, they
Loved
wanted,
it.
they just loved it. And so most of
Yeah,
the kids were just crowding. Instead of going to get their books, they were crowding around the dogs. And the dogs are so sweet.
yeah, they're
And
very fun.
dogs just make a huge positive difference. And they're so gentle. Those therapy dogs are so gentle, but they've gone through training too.
Yes, yes, a lot of desensitization. And dogs are just as individualistic as us. Sometimes you'll just have a dog that's a little more sensitive, but
Mhm.
it's up to us to make sure that they know how to operate when they're being put in those, therapy situations and stuff so they can be almost invincible in all situations, which these dogs sound like they are.
Right. And I wanted to ask you too. Um, I was looking at the list again of things that the issues that some dogs have. Now,
Sure.
the one that stood out to me, and you mentioned it, the separation anxiety. There was a Super Bowl commercial. I don't know if you
Mm,
saw this,
no, I
where,
haven't. Tell me.
well, there was a Super Bowl commercial a few weeks back where this dog had separation anxiety from its owners. So they raised the dog up from a little puppy, and then the owners would have to leave the dog at home. So the dog would tear up the house and he'd rip up couch cushions and everything.
Mhm.
So they didn't know what to do. So what they did was, it was kind of clever with the commercial because he didn't know where they were going with it.
Yeah.
So they started looking up on their computer for like the dog transporters.
Hmm.
So they come back home with the dog transporter, and they open it up, and it's a little dog. So they brought the dog a buddy.
Uh-huh.
So the whole crux of the commercial was the dog had a buddy. He wasn't lonely at home anymore.
Okay.
And they end up with the two dogs sleeping together on a bed with one of the owners. So I'm like, okay, well that seemed just kind of
What a nice
glossed
story with a
over.
bow.
Yeah. But could that be some of the reasons why dogs do have separation anxiety? They're all by themselves and they don't have that stimuli like the owners being at home.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely possible, especially with the drastic contrast from being home all day long to now being away for more than half a day. That's quite a lot. But teaching your dog how to have some kind of impulse control when you're away by either approximating the amount of time that you leave or making that stressful time more positive, not just with another dog. Sometimes that does help, right? Getting a housemate, but sometimes that might exemplify your problems.
Right.
Pack mentality is very real. If you have a dog that's very impressionable coming into a household where a dog's already upset, you might have two upset dogs now. So
Right.
there are a lot of other things you can do. One thing I like to try to do is if I have a dog that's either fearful of something like fireworks, or if I have a dog that is stressed, like anxiety, make that time more positive by giving them like a puzzle feeder with even higher ticket treats, like peanut butter that's frozen. So they have their mind preoccupied in that stressful time to calm down, right? You're giving them another option. So sometimes just using extra positive stuff, and especially food, in a way that is going to get them to think about another way of thinking and a way of being. Food
Hmm.
is emotional, so use that or use treats, even toys. But everybody's different. Some dogs need a little bit more help than that. But yeah, separation anxiety is definitely a big thing.
Now, in the time that you've been doing it, what has been the biggest dog that you've worked with and the smallest dog?
Good question. Biggest dog by size or personality?
Both.
Both.
So you can tell me both of them.
Yeah,
One with personality and one size.
sure. So I would say biggest breed of dog, Bull Mastiff, 115 pounds.
Wow.
This dog was, I mean, he's an amazing dog now, and I trust him a whole ton. But he's 150 pounds of big dog, and he was a lunger. So imagine a 115-pound dog lunging at
That's
people
huge.
and animals. It's huge. It's a safety concern for the owner being pulled down and the receiving end of that, right? But this dog was, he wasn't exactly a COVID puppy, but he had moved to an area with a lot more high traffic into an apartment, right? So now all of a sudden there's a big influx of dogs and stimulus that he wasn't quite ready for. So that was the biggest dog to date. I do have a Cane Corso puppy, which is a very large breed dog, and he's growing like 20 pounds each week. So I'll let you
Wow.
know how big he is by the end. My smallest dog that I've worked with was about 5 pounds. And
Wow.
the issue with that dog was mostly excessive barking. So excessive barking, a lot of the time with little dogs, we just pick them up and just move them away. But holding dogs accountable is much more powerful than you physically moving them or you constantly baiting them to a good answer. We want them to make the answer themselves. So excessive barking was a big thing that this dog struggled with for
Now
this.
you were saying also, and I'll jump back to the to that in a second.
Okay.
You were saying also that when you're working with dogs, um, you have to build that rapport. And now, does it generally always take the 28 days? Are you able to get that, or are you able to, or are there instances where you have to do maybe go back and do a follow up to say, okay, maybe Fido is not doing a couple of things that it needs to be doing. He's doing okay, but he might need a little more reinforcement. Do you ever have cases like that too?
I do. I do have cases like that where a student might need a little more TLC because they're struggling on a subject, right? Just like your students. One student might have a really hard time with math.
Right.
I'll have a student that has a really hard time with impulse, uh, but maybe he's great at everything else. So I'll just come back for another lesson, or I'll try to simulate that situation where he will be triggered so I can show him the appropriate way to act with the owner there so they can see the techniques I use. I never use techniques that are not like able to replicate by the owner because then there's no point, right? So I try to keep it easy for both the animal and for the owner so they can communicate on an easy level. But yeah, that's usually how I would approach a problem.
And how long are the sessions usually in that 28-day window?
Usually an hour. So
Usually an
I'll
hour.
come, I usually do a free in-home evaluation where I bring my sidekick Moose. He's a German Shepherd, 2 years old.
Oh,
He's kind of like my therapy dog, or the therapy dog for the other dogs, I should say.
uh-huh.
Previously reactive, but he helps me evaluate how reactive or how aggressive your dog might be with just seeing him, right? I can read a dog's language, body language, and the nice thing about animals is they wear all their emotions on their face and in their body. It's very clear to read a lot of these dogs. Whereas
Wow.
people, you might need months of rapport, like with a therapist, right? To really
Hmm.
get to the issues. With dogs, a lot of the time, we kind of know where their issues are at. So thankfully, not many students need extra help. But the way that we designed our 28-day program is that 28 days is dedicated strictly to you for private lessons where I come to your house or come to you in the areas that your dog is triggered so we can work through them together.
Yes.
And then everyone is graduated into a year of group class.
Mm.
So the group class is for maintenance of behaviors, right? It's a controlled environment because everyone there has their leashes, they have their tools, which are their e-collars, and all of these people have been through the same exact process, so they know how to control their dog in the event something happens. But that's how we maintain behaviors and nip other behaviors in the bud is by that 1 year of group class after for maintenance. What the nice thing is about the program overall is we're performance guaranteed. And there is like even a refund policy because we're so confident in the way our techniques work. So we actually haven't had that many students need that much extra, but we're always there if they do.
Wow. Well, since you're on that subject,
Yeah.
let me see if I can find the reviews because I printed some reviews that I saw. I mean, I was so
Aw.
impressed
I love
with
reading these stories. They are the nicest, the testaments at the very end to see how much you really changed the life of not only the dog, but the people.
well,
Is
your reviews were perfect. Like I was looking at your reviews on Google. Perfect.
yeah, yeah.
5.0. And there were like 50 reviews. So I mean,
Yeah.
that says a lot. And they had some really nice things. So let me read. I'll keep the person's name. I
Sure.
won't say who they are, but let me read what this person said. Okay, Lauren is great with our dogs. My aggressive German Shepherd was nipping and getting out of control. Lauren's calm but firm style was perfect for my dogs. We are 4 weeks in, and I've seen a complete change in attitude in the dogs. Call Mango Dogs. You deserve the best. Oh, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And then this is what another person said. Working with Lauren over the last 4 weeks has been a dream. In only 4 weeks, we were able to walk our dogs without them barking and pulling at other people and dogs. We have been able to take them on outings like breweries without problems. They are able to stay in place when we have people come over instead of barking, jumping, and nipping at all. These are all the things I thought we'd never be able to overcome. Prior to working with Lauren, we had worked with 2 other dog trainers without success. Not only was Lauren great at working with our dogs, but I feel she listened to our wants, needs, and concerns. I cannot recommend Lauren enough. Well, if that's not glowing, I don't know what is.
I know. I'm so lucky to have so many great people say nice things at the very end because I almost put them through boot camp. I mean, 4 weeks is real fast and there's a lot that they pick up and learn, but the transformation is also so large. So it's nice to hear what they have to say at the end after all of that.
And I'll bet it's not only important for the dogs to pick up that, but the owners as well, because the owners, I mean, in a sense, you're training the owners too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the biggest part almost. I'm training the owners to be trainers. And a lot of the time, these people are rightfully so PTSD'd from all the things that their dogs have put them through, whether it be a dog fight or them biting another person. I understand. So it's me building confidence in the person too, so that their confidence travels down the leash to their dog instead of anxiety and fear and tension when they see another dog and they choke up on that leash. But it's been nice to work with both client and dog together at the same time. I think that's really the ticket to their success.
Now, I wanted to ask you too, did you have any pets when you were a child that
Yeah.
still kind of just stay with you? They've stayed with you all this time.
Yeah, that's a good question. My very first dog, actually, he was a Shih Tzu. His name was Miko after the little raccoon in Pocahontas because he had a black mask.
Aw,
But yes, he was definitely, your first dog. All dogs are going to stick in your heart and all pets, but he was my very first one and he was solely mine, delivered to me on Christmas with a little bow.
aw.
And funny enough, he was a great dog, very affectionate family dog. But, as a trainer nowadays and looking back at how he was, there was a time where I was real small. I was petting him when he was eating. Bad mistake as a kid.
Oh,
Right on
wow.
the face.
Oh,
Yeah, right on
no.
the face. Yeah. Still loved the heck out of him. I've learned some lessons a hard way, but now I know. Yeah, I know how to curb these issues, but he's definitely one that sticks in my heart. I have pictures that pop up once in a while of me as a kid holding this little Shih Tzu puppy, so he's definitely number one.
Aw,
Yeah.
that's what a sweet story.
Yeah.
Wow. So you've taken all these experiences and you've become quite a successful trainer. Um, what do you think was the most difficult? Training the bigger animals or
Hmm.
dogs, or does it tend to vary from animal to animal?
That's a good question. I think it does vary from animal to animal and what you're actually working on. But I would say the more intelligent an animal is, more manipulative they usually are, and those are the animals that are usually hardest, whether it be an individual dog or an animal species like a primate. Primates are extremely smart. Those guys are hard because they're almost 3 steps ahead of you. So you really have to be on your A game. If I
Wow.
have a dog on the contrast end or an animal that's just food driven and that's all they are and they're happy go lucky, easiest animals and dogs to train because the
Wow.
fastest way to their heart is through their mouth and through affection and everything. So yeah, I would say one of the best animals that I was able to train was it happened to be a rhino. And if you find what an animal's favorite high ticket treat is, a lot of the time they will work with you for quite a lot. So just work with him and building rapport with him and training him how to feel comfortable on stressful situations helped us both move towards a goal that made him comfortable enough to even fly from our zoo to the zoo in Hawaii. So these little things really do help animals long term and dogs.
Wow. Now, I wanted to ask you too. There are mango dogs in different locations around the US, and then there's even one in Canada too, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So Canada was the very first location. Ted Ephemiadis is the head honcho. He's our big mentor for all of us trainers, but he's been working with aggressive dogs for years, and he teaches master classes on these techniques, and that's kind of how I like to see our program. It's not
Hmm.
just schooling for this one dog; it's a master class for you that you can
Right.
use to apply to all these other dogs that will come into your life that might have unique issues. But he started, and then uh, after a few years, had met a client named Mo, who he helped train his dogs for. And Mo was so inspired and awed that he decided, I want to be a trainer too. I'm going to open one in North Carolina. So he opened one in North Carolina, and then they added me a couple years after in San Diego. It's one of the first franchises that started this chain. So now we have one in Dallas, we have one in Austin, we have one in Washington, and the family keeps growing. I just hired my first trainer under me, which has been great and so helpful.
Awesome. What was that experience like for you, being able to select the person yourself and to see what qualities you wanted in a
Yeah,
trainer?
there's so many different things that go into like finding somebody that you're going to click with. I wanted to make sure that I could communicate to this person just fine and that it felt comfortable and that he had a good background and willingness to learn. That's a big thing
Hmm.
because there's so many different techniques, and I know that different techniques work for different people, but when you come into a new company, it's important to collaborate. So I wanted to make sure that he was open to the ideas that we use and the techniques that we use, and he definitely was. Um, our paths kind of cross too in terms of expertise, which makes it even easier for us to float ideas to each other and everything. His name is Zachary, and he has previously run board and train like programs himself, which is when dogs go to his facility and stay with him for weeks.
Hmm.
In contrast to me, where I go to somebody else and I do it in their home, so I'm mobile. So now he's becoming mobile, and he also has a Schutzhund background, which is protective dog work and everything, which also crosses over with my anti-poaching unit dog kind of knowledge. So that's been a fun overlay for both of us, where we can pick ideas and techniques off each other that work for the students we have in front of us.
So it's flourishing and growing. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, it's great. Lots of different things happening.
So if one of my listeners or on the video podcast, one of my viewers wanted to get in contact with you to get help for their dogs at Mango Dogs, what's the best way to do it? I know you have a website.
Yeah, so the Mango Dog San Diego website for my branch in particular is how you could find me. You can always email me at laurenmangodogs@gmail.com or call me at 858-247-1662.
All
So
right.
you'll get one of my colleagues on the phone with you. We always, sort things out over the phone first, make sure we have a good history of your dog, see if we'd be a good fit for you as well, because we're not forcing people to do it our way. We just know that we can help a unique group of animals that might not want to be trained by other trainers down here in San Diego. So we're here to help. But you can always call me, email me. You can reach out to us via social media, but we can definitely link up that way.
Well, that's awesome. Well, and the website is mangodogs.com, correct?
Correct. Yes.
All right. Well, Lauren Lee, thank you so very much for doing the
My
podcast
pleasure.
today. You were a fun, amazing guest, knowledgeable, and you're an
Thanks.
awesome trainer. So thank you so very much for agreeing to do the show. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. And hopefully
Thank
we'll see more dogs coming through our way.
Yes, yes. Well, you definitely will, I'm sure.
Yeah. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Phil.
You're welcome. So with that, that is the end of this episode of the Total Podcast with me, your host, Phil Scott. Everyone stay safe, be careful out there, take care of one another, and we will talk again soon.